with the writing, there's a lot of new things with academic discussion, but the big thing that I really tell students is that with that question, you have to read if you've ever taken an online class, it's like a teacher poses a question and then two students answer, and then you have to respond as well. The big thing that I tell the students is that you should make sure that you contribute to the conversation. Don't just copy what people say. Don't try to paraphrase what they say. Be integrated. You can do that a little bit, but not for that one. Instead, you want to try to add information, contribute to the conversation.
Welcome to the Sojourning Scholar podcast. If you are embarking on your journey to study abroad in the US, Canada, or Australia as an international student from a non-English speaking country, then you probably know that getting a high score on an English language proficiency test like the TOEFL iBT will be an important step in your journey. And that's why I'm very excited for the conversation with today's guest, Josh MacPherson. Josh is the founder of TST Prep, a highly rated English language proficiency test prep company, and the creator of one of the most popular TOEFL prep channels on YouTube at the time of this recording. In this episode, Josh will be revealing for the first time on a podcast some of his best prep strategies for the new version of the TOEFL iBT, and will also share his thoughts on how to decide between taking the TOEFL iBT or taking other competing tests like the IELTS or the Duolingo. But first, let's hear from our sponsors. This podcast episode is brought to you by the Funding Masterclass for International Students created by Sojourning Scholar. If you are struggling to find ways to fund your international education, you can now discover the secrets that allowed me to fund my education in the US, covering hundreds of thousands of dollars in my exclusive course, which you can sign up today for free at sojourningscholar.com/funding. In this course, you will learn the strategies and resources I and many international students have utilized to make their educational dreams in the US come true without breaking the bank. So don't miss this unique opportunity to learn how you can make your own study abroad dreams come true. Go to sojourningscholar.com/funding, linked in the description section below to sign up today. Josh, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So Josh, just exploring your background, I was very interested to see that you do have a lot of things in common with some of the people who watch our platform, which are people who aspire to go to foreign lands for some passion. In your case, while here we talk about sojourning scholars, you are indeed a sojourning teacher living in Japan. So tell us a bit about that experience, how that came about.
So a sojourning teacher. I never thought of it that way, but yeah, it's good. I'm a trained teacher in the States. I was teaching high school history and then also doing a little bit of English as well. And then I got an opportunity to teach in Korea as an ESL teacher. And that was quite a while ago, maybe 14, 15 years ago now. And then I did that for a year and then jumped around a bit. I went to Japan for a year. I went back to the States, got a master's in teaching ESL, English as a second language. And then I was teaching in New York City for a while, about 6 years. I was teaching at ASA College in Midtown Manhattan and helping international students. I think a lot of students that watch your channel, that they have a student visa, they have to be in class 20 hours a week. And one of those classes was TOEFL. And so I was teaching TOEFL for 20 hours a week. It was a learning experience for everybody. And so that's how I got into TOEFL. And then for that, my wife in Japan, she came with me to New York, and she's Japanese. She's from Kyoto. And we were living in New York for a while. New York got pretty difficult to live in. So about 4 or 5 years ago now, we moved to Japan and Kyoto, the kind of traditional city, and been here ever since. Not sure if I'll be able to go back to the States or not. I would love to. I'm not sure.
And how's life assimilating to Japan as an American?
Well, it's mixed, like everything. It has its good and bad points. Our family is very supportive. My wife's side of the family is very supportive. We have a good network. We have a good community. People are very nice and open. I am probably the only foreigner here. So it's like 95% Japanese and like 5%, there's like one Turkish guy and another Italian guy and me. And then that's all that was around the neighborhood. And so, it's very, it's not like living in Tokyo. It's a little different. And so when you're in that type of environment, there's trade-offs. You have good points and bad points. You're living away from home as well. There's trade-offs, that you miss home, you miss your friends, you miss your culture. But there's a reason why you moved, either it's work or family or money or whatever it is. And so you just kind of take the good with the bad, and I'm here and it's good. It's good for the most part. But yeah, I will always feel like an American. I'll never feel like a Japanese person. I think I could live here, 50 years and I'll never feel like a Japanese person. I'll always be American.
That's very interesting. So, Josh, I would like to segue a little bit and get into the TOEFL, which is your core area of expertise. There's been a lot of changes coming from ETS lately. Just a lot of changes in the overall test prep space,
Hmm.
especially a lot of these being motivated by what the pandemic era has brought upon college admissions. You've seen changes
Right.
to the SAT, changes to the TOEFL, changes to the GRE. So in the sense of what's been going on with the changes to the TOEFL, what do you think motivated this change? Why is the TOEFL iBT changing when the last change just happened in 2019, 4 years ago?
Well, let me premise everything that I say with I'm not a representative from ETS. It's a private company, TST Prep. So the test was kind of standardized for a while and didn't change that much. And then in 2019, as you mentioned, it did change quite a bit. It traditionally was about 4 hours long, and then it shortened to 3 hours. They got rid of a couple reading passage questions. They shortened the number of questions. There was about 12 to 14 questions, and it was 10 questions. They shortened the speaking section from 6 to 4 questions, and the listening section, I believe, shortened a little bit as well. They cut away another part. So that was in 2019. And basically, why did this change come about? I don't really know exactly. This was pre-pandemic, but I imagine they were trying to make the test more user-friendly, have the test be a better experience for people. 4 hours is a very long time. 3 hours is a really long time, but better than four, I guess. And so they were trying to keep the level of the test, the proficiency level of the test, so that even if you took the old test or new test, you would still get the same score. So they found a kind of middle ground and did 3 hours. And then most recently changed it to 2 hours. So that was in July of this year. So that was about 3 or 4 months ago now. And now the test is 2 hours long. There's no break. There used to be a 10-minute break. There's no break now before the speaking section. They replaced a writing question. There used to be something called the independent question. Now there is something called the writing for academic discussion question. And I could talk about that more if you'd like.
Yeah.
The reading passage, the reading section got shorter. There were 3 passages. Now there's 2 passages. The listening is pretty much the same and the speaking is pretty much the same. So the reading and writing were the big changes. They got it under 2 hours. And the reason why they did that, your guess is as good as mine. I have some educated guesses. One guess is that they wanted to, again, make the test a more user-friendly experience. And they also wanted to make it something that could compete with something like the Duolingo English test, where the Duolingo English test takes about an hour, at most 75 minutes to complete, and TOEFL 3 hours. And if you're going to take a 75-minute test or a 3-hour test, of course, you're going to take the shorter test. So I think some pressure from Duolingo was part of that, and also some desire to have a better test experience, user experience for people to, not have a break, have it 2 hours, and for it to be pretty convenient.
I see. Okay. So yeah, for those who are not really aware of the major changes that have been impacted on the TOEFL, can we just look at how each sections have changed from a perspective of how long each section is for the reading, listen, speaking, writing?
Sure. Let's test my knowledge here. So the reading section was in the past 3 passages took about technically 54 minutes. 2019. Before that, it was about 60 minutes. And now it is about 36 minutes. So it's 18 minutes per passage, and you have to answer 10 questions per passage. So you have to answer 20 questions, read 2 passages, and you have 36 minutes to do it. Each passage is about 700 words long. So you have to read 1,400 words and answer 20 questions in 36 minutes. And that is usually a challenge. Just on a side note, it's hard. Time management is a hard thing for a lot of people when they do this TOEFL reading. Listening, time management is not as much of an issue. The listening is 5 passages, 2 conversations, 3 lectures. The lectures are about 5 minutes long, and the conversations are about 3 minutes long. And you do not see the questions until after the passage. So unlike IELTS, where you can see the questions and listen at the same time, TOEFL, you do not see the questions until after you listen. So you have to take good notes, pay good attention. There's some strategies and things like that. One other thing I should mention about the reading and listening is that there used to be something called a dummy sample, a dummy passage. So basically, there used to be an extra passage in either the reading or listening that didn't count towards your score. They were they were just checking, to see if this question worked or not, this passage
Hmm.
worked or not. That doesn't happen anymore. You'll
Okay.
always get 2 reading passages. You'll always get 5 listening passages. It'll always be the same. So, and then the speaking section, there's 4 questions. One is called the independent question, and then 3 are called the integrated. That'll take about 20 minutes to finish. And the first question, independent, is 45 seconds to speak. The
Hmm.
other 3 questions are 60 seconds to speak. So one interesting way of thinking about it is that your English speaking fluency is measured by 3 minutes and 45 seconds of speech. So, that's all they're measuring. So, there's certain strategies you can use to help you maximize those 3 minutes and 45 seconds. The last section is the writing, and that takes 30 minutes to finish. It used to take almost an hour, about 50 minutes to finish. The first question is an integrated writing question that takes about 20 minutes. And then the new question, the writing for academic discussion, takes 10 minutes. And that's the TOEFL. Super exciting.
Yeah. So, in terms of test prep strategies, we know the
Sure.
test is shorter. What are some elements of your prep strategy that you advise your students to maintain? And what are some aspects of your prep strategies that are going to be different? If we can look at things from at a section level, so like going with the reading, the listening, the speaking, and the writing.
Okay, well, in terms of the content of the test, besides the writing question, hasn't changed really. The test is the same. You could
Hmm.
pick up an old book from, 5 years, even 10 years ago, and the number of questions will be different. The way it's spread out is a little different, but the content itself really hasn't changed much at all. So my strategies are not that much different as they were 5 years ago or 10 years ago. A lot of it is just update. Well, I wasn't doing it 10 years ago, but anyway, yeah, a lot of it is kind of updating the content to be reflective of opening now.
Mm.
One thing that has been cut away so little things have been cut away. So, for example, the last question, both sections, is usually something called a summary question. They also sometimes had something called fill in the table
Mm.
questions, and that I have not seen or heard of in a very long time. So I still teach it because according to ETS, that question has not gone away, but I have not heard reports of it showing up on the test. The other thing that changed, and this is more concrete, is that there are far fewer vocabulary questions. So when they reduced the number of questions in each TOEFL reading passage from 13 to 10, they had to cut away some questions. And what they cut mostly is the vocabulary questions. It used to be a lot of vocabulary questions, and they were really simple. I mean, there was just a word, and then you had to find a synonym, which word, the vocabulary question is still there, but there's only about 1 or 2 per passage. In the past, there used to be 3 to 5, so a lot less of that. The listening in regards to strategy, something that has evolved over time is the note-taking strategy, because I get a lot of pushback on note-taking. Some people hate it. Some people think it's not helpful. Some people think that it doesn't, they can't listen and take notes at the same time. So I've gone through a lot of, different things with note-taking strategies for listening. And what I've settled on now is basically, showing some kind of ways of taking notes, showing how I take notes. And if people are struggling to take notes, it's up to them if they want to take notes or not. But if they want to practice at home and try to get better at it, I usually recommend that they only write down, let's say, for example, 5 words. You're going to listen to a passage, just write down 5 words. That's it. That's all you do. Write down 5 words. And having a kind of goal in mind that you're thinking, I'm going to try to find the 5 most important words, actually tends to have a pretty positive impact on people's listening and on their note taking in general. So that is one reason why I often recommend to students, just write down 5 words. That's it. And then if that goes okay, you think it's helpful, all right, try to write 6 words tomorrow or 7 when you practice. So with note taking, I tend to tell people to start small, and really your goal is not to understand everything. Your goal is to, not to write down everything or memorize everything. Your goal is just to try to identify the most important things and write them down. With the speaking section, the things that have changed is, there's fewer questions and there's fewer independent questions, which is where you have to come up with the ideas by yourself. You have to think of things by yourself. So there's less of an emphasis on that. Nowadays, I focus a lot on how to read and listen well. Another thing that I've changed a bit is the templates. There's a lot of questions about templates. What's the best template? Does ETS know if I'm using a template? Do I need to use a template? So I give, again, like the note taking, a lot of leeway with students. I say, here's a template. Here are a bunch of synonyms, for this template and different ways of using the same phrases a different way. Make your own if you want, or don't use it at all. It's up to you. There's nothing in the ETS rule book that says you have to answer this way or anything like
Hmm.
that. And then with the writing is, there's a lot of new things with academic discussion, but the big thing that I really tell students is that with that question, you have to read if you've ever been taking an online class, it's like a teacher poses a question and then two students answer, and then you have to respond as well. The big thing that I tell the students is that you should make sure that you contribute to the conversation. Don't just copy what people say. Don't try to paraphrase what they say. Be integrated. You can do that a little bit, but not for that one. Instead, you want to try to add information, contribute to
Mm.
the conversation. So those are the kind of newer things and things that have evolved over time. What I tell students for each section.
And in your experience, when it comes to mistakes a lot of students make taking the TOEFL
Mhm.
IBT, what are some of the biggest mistakes you see in each section?
I'll say what jumps out at me at first. So the first thing that jumps out at me is the mistakes is not really a certain thing that people get tripped up on a certain section or question type. It's more like the way that people study. A lot of people practice with a practice test and check their answers and get their practice test score, then do another practice test. So I'm more critical of the way people practice and prepare than I am about actual like content of the test. In my experience, most people, they just want to get their test score and move on with their life. I would do the same thing, of course. So, I just want to make sure that I help them do that the best they can, and they don't have to get a teacher or anything like that, but just before you practice, you have a goal. Maybe you have a goal score, or maybe you have a weakness that you want to improve on. Maybe you're bad at answering TOEFL reading inference questions, you want to get better at that. Maybe TOEFL speaking question 3 you're having trouble with, you want to focus on that. You have a certain goal in mind, practice, and then you review what you did. Focus on those things those goals you had beforehand. You try to make that better next time. You're practicing with purpose, and you're reviewing as well. Those are things that are pretty hard to do by yourself, actually. So it's something that I kind of go back to often, again and again. And the other thing that jumps out, this is in terms of content, is for the TOEFL speaking. Most of the time, people think their problems are with content, with what they say. They didn't hear the reading, the listening was a little too fast, or they didn't include something important. But actually, most of the time, if they don't get their speaking score, it's usually because of the way they're speaking,
Mm,
their
mm,
fluency, their pronunciation, their pauses. It's almost very rarely is it about content.
mm,
Very, very rarely. The same goes for the writing as well. Most of the time, it's about your writing mechanics, your
mhm.
vocabulary and grammar, and not really about did you include all the information from the passages or anything like that.
I see. Okay.
Mhm.
Very interesting. Really, really good tips there, guys. I hope you guys are taking notes. So, Judge, when it comes to order tests prep, students have the option of prepping for Duolingo. Students have the
Yeah.
option of prepping for the IELTS. And I've seen that Duolingo, that came on the market in 2021 as an option.
Yeah, it got popular 2021 during COVID. It's been actually around for quite a while, but
Hmm.
it just wasn't accepted or popular, and actually kind of scoffed at in higher ed. But COVID happened. Universities wanted international students, and the Duolingo English test was the only test that was available to be taken because all the other tests were only available in test centers, and people
Mm,
couldn't leave their homes. So Duolingo filled a void, and it's good timing for them, and it's kind of settled. Most schools
mm.
still accept Duolingo and feel that it's an appropriate measurement. So yeah, that's how it came about, and that's how it got popular, and it's still popular now.
I see. So,
Yeah.
for students who are considering taking the Duolingo versus taking the TOEFL, obviously this will depend on if say you're applying to a school and the school accepts both tests. So,
Yeah.
what are the differences between the Duolingo and the TOEFL that students can exploit?
What do you mean by exploit exactly? Like,
So the way I like to think of these different English language proficiency tests, especially you can look at the IELTS and the TOEFL that have been
mhm,
around competing with each other for a while, is
yeah,
that if your strengths are stronger in the IELTS speaking, let's say for example you're someone who you can easily express yourself when you're talking to a human, you do have an advantage taking the IELTS compared to the TOEFL. So So when it comes to the Duolingo and the IELTS, in your experience, where would you say students have an edge, or like what test would you say they should choose if they have the option of taking either of those different exams?
So I'll talk about TOEFL and IELTS first. They're pretty comparable in terms of price, in terms of now length. TOEFL got a lot shorter, and
Mm-hmm.
IELTS I don't think is planning on changing anytime soon. Another important difference of the IELTS is that you can also use a pencil and piece of paper. TOEFL iBT does have a paper edition now that's popular in India and a couple other countries. So those tests are pretty similar price, and in terms of experience, if TOEFL is shorter now. And as you mentioned before, the speaking section, if you want to talk to a person, it's better to take IELTS than
Mm-hmm.
TOEFL. So those two are pretty comparable, and also they're pretty comparable in terms of reputation. The IELTS and TOEFL both been around a while, and both have a pretty good reputation in higher education. The Duolingo English test, in terms of it's an attractive test because, first of all, the price point, it's cheap. You can take the test. I think it's $59 now. It used to be $49, now it's $59, and you can order 2 for $100, and it's pretty convenient to take. You can take it pretty much any time. TOEFL, you can do that as well with the home edition, but it's a lot more expensive, the TOEFL. I would say that if your university really doesn't care which one you take, and they're very clear that it doesn't matter, you probably should just take the Duolingo from a price standpoint. From the standpoint of reputation, if you feel like maybe you need to have some type of difference in your resume or your application, you feel like you have to show something, you have to really prove your English, so to speak. The TOEFL is kind of seen as like for lack of a better term, gold standard of English proficiency. Like, it's like in Japan here, for example, it's a big deal if you get a good TOEFL score.
Oh, okay.
And then Duolingo doesn't have that reputation. Maybe in the future they will, but just right now they don't. But yeah, everything being equal, I would take the Duolingo in terms of the experience when you do the Duolingo English test. So, another thing about being accepted is that the Duolingo English test is only online. So there's some schools that won't take a home edition. Like, so TOEFL has a home edition. Some schools won't let you take a home edition. They'll tell you have to go to the test center. And if your school says that, then you can't take Duolingo because they don't do test centers. With Duolingo, the way that it's experienced is that it tracks your eye movement, and there is a human in the loop. There is somebody who reviews the video and reviews your answers, but it's kind of cryptic. You don't know exactly. They don't release how humans are in the loop exactly. So it's very much a automated experience. And, sometimes you'll get a test score that says your test is invalid. And you're like, why? And they say, because your eyes weren't looking at the screen for long periods of time. That's the biggest complaint about Duolingo, actually. It's just that the invalid test scores, there's a lot of reasons to get an invalid test score. It's a great experience. Most people really like it. That's just the one thing that people complain about with it. I'm sure there's other things, but that's the one thing I hear about the most. With TOEFL, it is a little awkward because you have somebody watching you. There's a proctor who's looking at your camera. You don't see them, of course. You see them. You meet them when you first get on. You download some software. They give you some instructions. They check your room. You have to do some certain security checks, and they do have some software that is pretty invasive to your computer, same as Duolingo, because they want to make sure the test is secure. You can do both at home. The experience is pretty much the same, except one, you have a human proctor watching you. The other one is you don't have that. The Duolingo, in terms of the test content, one thing that you could exploit from Duolingo is that they don't have these long passages like the reading and listening in TOEFL.
Okay.
So, the longest reading passage is like 100 words, or maybe a couple hundred words. Same thing with the listening. It's all very short. And if you've used Duolingo app, you've probably experienced some of the question types already. Things like where there's a conversation and you have to pick like what's the best response. That's a new interactive listening question that they have now. And so while TOEFL is a very academic English test, it's very geared towards university. Duolingo tries to do that, but really it's pretty much, in my mind, a general English test. They wouldn't say that, I don't think, but that's how I That's how I imagine it. The passages are a bit shorter. There's not really, you don't ever have to like synthesize information. Like in the TOEFL, you have to take the reading and listening. You have to write about both,
Mm-hmm.
or speak about both. You don't really have to do that for Duolingo. You speak about a photo. You answer questions that are pretty basic, like independent, like the old independent speaking or writing
Mm-hmm.
questions. But yeah, you don't have to write as, and also the speaking responses are a bit shorter. Well, no, actually, the speaking responses are the same, 60 to 90 seconds, but the
Okay.
writing is shorter.
Okay.
Writing, you don't have to write more than like 200 words
Okay.
at most. Yeah.
I see. Okay. Very
Yeah.
interesting. So as far as like test prep goes with today's age of AI, I see on your YouTube channel you starting to explore some content around AI and ChatGPT and TOEFL test prep. In what
Right.
ways are you seeing the use of platforms like ChatGPT for TOEFL people who are prepping for the TOEFL?
Well, I don't know exactly. I'm just kind of giving advice to people. But
Mm-hmm.
the reason I gave advice is to kind of circle back to what we talked about before. It's just that I noticed that the biggest weakness is just the way that people practice. ChatGPT and AI seems like a kind of magic thing that magically does whatever you want it to do. And then
Mm-hmm.
when you sit down to actually try to use it, it's not magic, and it's interesting and super useful, but
Mm-hmm.
you just kind of have to play with it to kind of get it to do what you want it to do. So I think there's some interesting, websites using AI in different ways uh, to help students not necessarily prepare for TOEFL, but
Mm-hmm.
for English language proficiency in general. One site that I will recommend that maybe you could put in the description somewhere is My
Yeah.
Speaking Score, which is designed by John Healy, and that uses ETS's speech rater. And he also started playing with some AI tools to give feedback to students
Oh wow.
based on their speaking score. So he's playing with some tools like that. Another tool that I recommend to students with speaking is Natural Readers, which is the AI, yes, speaking voices that, like, you can copy and paste text and then they'll speak. It's good for shadowing if people want
Okay.
to do that type of practice.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so there's certain ways that I think AI is really helpful for practicing and for also getting feedback on your speaking and writing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Most of the time when students seek out teachers, it's usually for speaking and writing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think AI really helps with that if you are a pretty disciplined student. If you can, sit down and get feedback, put in the right prompt. So a lot of these
Mm-hmm.
new videos that you mentioned on the YouTube channel is showing students how to give the right prompt so you can get good feedback on your speaking and writing, and
Mm-hmm.
then also what to do with that speaking and writing. Okay, so now maybe you have trouble with articles, your subject verb agreement is a little off. It's never the rules. Students know everyone knows the rules. It's not about that. It's about, okay, I know the rules. How do I actually, do it automatically and apply it? And so that's what I talk about and how to practice with it, with the AI stuff. We're playing with tools right now, TST Prep. I
Mm-hmm.
just, it's kind of necessary, and I think it's really helpful. Um, so we're playing with that stuff. Nothing in the near future, but in the pipeline, we're thinking of using it in different ways to help people, because it's just so useful as long as you just get it right. If you can just
Right.
put it, in the right prompt, the right way, you can really get a lot out of it. But it's tricky. You got to be patient.
I see. I see.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's really cool what's going on in the test prep space with AI. So
Yeah.
now I think we can switch gears for the sake of time, and I think we can go to the question segment. So in this segment,
Sure.
I poll subscribers in our email list. So if you're watching this and you would have loved to have your questions answered, subscribe to our email list, which you can find in the description section below. So this question, I got a few questions like this, and it kind of relates to the topic of some test takers are a little bit concerned about their accents, and they think their accent are impacting their TOEFL speaking scores. What do you think about that? Like the importance of, do they have to change their accent when speaking, or what do they have to do?
It's a good question. Well, the first thing I would say is, again, My Speaking Score is a great site. It's not affiliated with TST Prep at all, and
Hmm.
they'll assess your speaking with the same technology that the TOEFL uses. We do speaking evaluations with the teacher as well. Lots of people like to meet with the teacher and talk to them, but yeah, I would recommend that just to get a lot of clarity on what
Hmm.
the issue is, because maybe accent is an issue, but there's a lot of aspects of accent. So, for example, your speaking speed, your syllable stress. When you stress a certain syllable in words that are long. So, like
Mm,
if you say university, universidad. If you say it like a Spanish speaker, that's going to hurt your score. If you are speaking too slow, that hurts your score. If you have
mm-hmm,
weird intonation patterns, a lot of Arabic students tend to have. It's not weird, but it's from their own first language, and it's the same kind of way of speaking in English. It would be picked up by the speech radar software that ETS uses. So
okay,
yes, it does have an impact. I usually, when I'm working with a student, accent is one of the last things I'll work on
okay,
because it's really hard to change. It's really hard to fix. So yeah, and I don't want to say fix, but just it's a really hard thing to, change a little bit.
okay.
I usually try to focus on some things that are very specific for TOEFL. So, for example, let's go back to the example university. If you say universidad, that is one word that you're probably going to say on test day. You're
Mm-hmm,
probably going to have to say professor, university, technology, my opinion. Those are words that you want to make sure that you pronounce well.
mm,
Since you are, you don't want to have to try to fix your accent because that would
mm-hmm,
just be a nightmare.
right.
Instead, you want to just focus on words, sounds, phrases that you'll have to say on test day that you are having a little difficulty with. Words that are in the template is an easy thing to work on. So I usually focus on those things first,
Mm-hmm,
and then I also will focus on word count a little bit because it's an easy thing to measure. If you are recording your voice and then you transcribe it, you write down what you said, you can count your words pretty easily. Your goal is to have at least 140 words per minute. Ideally, you want to have it up to 160 words per minute,
okay,
which is tough. That would be what you want. But now, if you're speaking really fast and nobody can understand you, that's a problem.
right,
Uh,
right.
so, so you kind of have to find a middle ground. But that's kind of the long answer. So, just to summarize, check it on a website that gives you granular, like tells you this is the issue, this is the issue. Maybe it's spoken grammar and not pronunciation is fine. Maybe your speed is fine, but your intonation is a little off.
Mm-hmm,
So you want to get really detailed feedback. Another website is Elsa Speech Analyzer, gives you good feedback. And then you do that, and then you identify your weaknesses, and then take it from there. And I have a lot of advice depending on the specific person.
I see. I see. Well, we'll make sure to drop all those recommendations in the description sections and make sure to check that out. This is a question most likely came from someone who's a fan of your YouTube channel. They ask, when will that be available on your YouTube channel, TST Prep? More videos relating to the new TOEFL IBT.
Great. Yeah. So TOEFL tests are really hard to make. They take quite a long time. And so but we are planning on having a new one at the end of the year, December. So there'll be another test that's in the new format. And that'll be the second one that we've done in 6 months. And we're trying to keep a steady pace of like a new one every 6 months.
Mm,
That's the goal, really. Again, they're pretty expensive and hard to make. There are tools that help. AI is helping a little bit.
mhm.
I wish it was better, but it's not quite there yet. Um, so yeah, so it just takes a lot of time. That's why we can't release too many. But yeah, our goal is twice a year, and there will be a new one at the end of the year.
I see. Okay. Well, stay
Yeah.
tuned. Stay tuned, guys.
Mhm.
For the sake of time, I won't want to take much of Josh's time. Thank you once again for coming on the platform. We really appreciate this insights you're providing to our audience. Can
Sure.
you, for audience, can you plug your TSC prep courses and tell us how they can get more from you?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. So we're at TST Prep. We have two main. We have teachers. We have courses. We have classes. We have a lot of things. But the two main things that I usually recommend is the TOEFL emergency course, which is for people who are in a hurry. If you have less than a month to prepare, everything, all the tips, tricks, and strategies you need, and enough practice in less than a month. If you have more than a month, we recommend the Score Builder program that has more practice and a little bit more like how to practice every day. For both of those programs, there's study plans as well. So 2 days, 1 week, 2 weeks, 1 month, 3 months, there's study plans no matter what. That's what we find most people need is just like, tell me what to do every day. That's all I
Mm-hmm.
want. Just tell me,
Mm-hmm.
just tell me what to do. So That's why they're there. And then we also have the teachers there to support our students as well.
I see.
TSTprep.com.
There you go. As for the emergency TOEFL course, you've had that course before the new TOEFL iBT changes. Have you made any additional changes to that course ever since?
Yeah, everything was updated in the end of July. So when the new
Okay.
test came out, everything got updated. The score builder is up. It will be updated by the end of this month.
Okay.
All the tests are updated. All the practice is updated. Just the videos need to be updated. So I'm working on that now. That's almost done. That's just another week or two that'll be finished up.
I
But yeah,
see.
that's right.
And for more free content on YouTube, you guys can check him out at TST Prep. Hard to miss, the biggest TOEFL channel on YouTube. So that's a lot of free content there for you guys. Let us know what you guys think in the comment section. If you have any questions, make sure to drop them there. And if we want to see Josh back on the platform, in the comment section, leave a comment saying more TOEFL prep tips. And hopefully we can get Josh back for another episode. Thank you once again, Josh. Really appreciate your insights to our audience. And I look forward to connecting with you in the future.
Thank you, man. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Take care.